Long before the age of mass monsters and sheer size, there was Steve Reeves. And he wasn't just a bodybuilder. He was more like an artist, an architect, who sculpted what a lot of people still think is the perfect classic physique. But a secret wasn't just lifting heavy. We're going to break down the unbelievably smart blueprint he left behind, a philosophy that honestly feels more relevant today than ever. To really get what he was all about, you have to hear it from the man himself. Reeves said it best. This was never about just mindlessly throwing weights around. No. It was a thoughtful, almost surgical process. He called it being a thinking bodybuilder. And that one idea, that's the key to his entire system. So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to break down his blueprint into 5 key parts. First, we'll look at his ideal, what he was actually aiming for. Then his core training principle, the golden triangle. After that, we'll get into the nitty-gritty of his 3-day workout plan, how he fueled his body, and finally, the powerful mindset that held it all together. All right, let's dive right in. First up, the goal itself. See, Reeves wasn't just chasing size for the sake of size. He was after a very specific look, a classical ideal that was all about symmetry and proportion, not just getting as huge as possible. And that's a massive difference from a lot of what we see today. And this difference is everything. Reeves famously never did a bulking face. He didn't believe in it. For him, every single pound of muscle had to be quality, and it had to be in the right place to create perfect balance. In fact, and this is wild, he meticulously measured and worked to get his neck, his arms, and his calves to all have the exact same circumference. I mean, who does that? It was all about creating that powerful, seamless silhouette. So, the big question is, how did he actually build that physique? Well, it all comes down to this simple, almost elegant principle he lived by, something we can call the golden triangle. This was the absolute engine room of his entire system.
Okay, so this triangle has 3 pillars. First, high intensity. When you're in the gym, you are working. You're giving it everything. Second, because that intensity is so high, the workouts have to be short. You can't go all out for hours. And third, and this is the real game changer for Reeves, ample recuperation. He was convinced that rest wasn't just downtime, it was literally when your body did the hard work of growing.
And this brings us right to the practical side of things, his actual weekly schedule. I gotta warn you, if you're used to modern 5- or 6-day workout splits, what you're about to see might actually shock you. Just look at that. Seriously, look at all that rest. Reeves trained his entire body from top to bottom only 3 times a week. That is it. All told, he was only in the gym for maybe 7 hours a week. His whole argument was that most people were constantly breaking their muscles down and never, ever giving them enough time to fully heal and grow back stronger. For him, more rest equaled more growth, period.
But it wasn't just about when he worked out. It was about how. Within those intense short workouts, he had another one of his logical rules. He didn't just pick exercises at random. No, he believed in a very specific, top-down flow designed to get the most out of every single minute.
He always started with his shoulders, the deltoids. From there, he reasoned the blood would naturally flow down into his chest for pec work, then down again into the lats for his back, which also helped warm up the biceps. Then it hit biceps, then triceps. And only at the very end, when his entire upper body was totally spent, would even think about training legs. To him, jumping from squats to shoulder presses and back again was just chaotic and inefficient.
Of course, a physique like that isn't just built with weights. That would be too easy. Reeves applied that same scientific, thinking bodybuilder mindset to his nutrition, creating what was basically a high-performance fuel strategy for his body. Now check this out, because his rule of thumb for diet might surprise you. 60% complex carbohydrates. Yes, 60%. That's way higher than most modern fitness diets. Why? Because he knew you needed a huge store of carbs to power those incredibly intense training sessions. The other 40% was then split right down the middle between quality protein and healthy fats. But here's the real genius, the part where he was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. It was all about the timing. The day before a workout, that was his big carb day. He'd load up on things like oatmeal and whole grains to literally saturate his muscles with fuel. Then, right after the workout, he'd pivot and focus on protein to rebuild all that tissue he just broke down. It was a simple, beautiful strategy. Fuel for performance, then eat for repair.
Okay, so now we're at the final, and maybe the most important piece of this whole puzzle. Because it wasn't just the weights or the food. What really truly set Steve Reeves apart were the intangibles, his mindset, and his unbreakable, non-negotiable principle. Reeves talked a lot about creating a, and I'm quoting him here, superior line of communication between your brain and your muscle. He did this by concentrating like a laser on every single rep. No distractions. He used slow, deliberate movements through a full range of motion, feeling the muscle squeeze on the way up and stretch on the way down. This intense focus, he believed, was the real secret to muscle quality, not just size.
And this mental focus is directly connected to the most defining principle of his entire life. Steve Reeves was famously, proudly all-natural. He took exactly 0 steroids. He was absolutely convinced that bodybuilding should be a health-first sport and that any real, lasting results had to come from what you could build yourself.
And nothing captures this belief better than his most iconic and, let's be honest, provocative quote. It is blunt, no doubt about it, but it shows you just how fiercely he believed in relying on your own natural potential, not some shortcut from a bottle.
And what's really amazing is that this all-natural, intelligent approach allowed bodybuilding to be just one part of his life, not the whole thing. Get this, during the peak of his film career, he would train seriously for just 1 month a year to get in shape for a role, and then maintain that incredible physique with minimal effort. It was all about life balance.
So in the end, the Steve Reeves blueprint is more than just a workout plan. It's a masterclass in efficiency, in intelligence, and in respecting the body's natural processes. It really leaves us with a powerful question, especially today. In a world that is completely obsessed with more, what can we learn from a legend who achieved something timeless by strategically and brilliantly doing less?